Hi everybody, foXnoMad here, and today I want to help you travel smarter by reviewing the DJI Osmo Action and letting you know whether or not it's still worth buying in 2020. Now, if you don't know, the DJI Osmo Action is their action camera, and it looks a lot like some other competing action cameras. It's got this small boxy look, it's waterproof, it's rugged, and it's meant to be taken outside and outdoors while you're doing sports, or if you just really want a very small camera that can go anywhere. The Osmo Action is 65 by 42 by 35 millimeters. It weighs 124 grams. It's got a battery of 1300 milliamp hours, which gives you, with realistic use, about 45 minutes of recording time at 4K. It's got a 12 megapixel Sony sensor and a 145 degree field of view. It's got a 2.2 touchscreen on the back and a 1.4 inch screen on the front, so you can see what you're recording, albeit with a little bit of a delay. And the Osmo Action shoots 4K at 60 and 30 frames per second, as well as a bunch of other different frame rates as well. And in addition to that, it's got some of the other weaknesses of other action cameras, like the microphone isn't very good, the photos aren't great, but that's pretty much to be expected from any action camera. One thing I like about the DJI Osmo Action is the exterior is a hard plastic that's this matte finish, which is very resistant to scratches, and it's very durable. I've used this Osmo Action for several months now, and I have to say that the durability of this product is what you would expect from an action camera. It doesn't feel very delicate at all. It's got a nice weight in the hand, and overall, there's a lot to like about this action camera. Now, given all of those similarities with other action cameras, the DJI Osmo Action does have some features which really do set it apart from other action cameras, but its most interesting features, though, are also its biggest disappointments, and it really does make this feel like an alpha product. Let me explain. So the main problem with the display is you can't switch the screens when you're recording. So let's say you start out shooting from a regular, behind the camera angle, and then you switch it to the front camera. You can't do that while you're recording. That's definitely something they need to include in the second generation of the Osmo Action. Having a front screen is extremely useful. I love having this front screen. I like that it's built into the camera itself. The display, it doesn't give you the 16:9 display, so it's, they've got a little bit of a tight fit there on the front, but having that front display is very useful, especially if you vlog around like this. If you're shooting on a big camera, and then you take this out to take more action shots, and you can get an idea of what this is like. This is also using the built-in microphone of the Osmo Action, so you can hear what that's like. And I'm noticing now that the front screen does time out, so you kind of have to, the front screen is not a touch screen, so the front screen times out and dims while you're recording, which really, if you're vlogging, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It should just stay on, but you just need to reach around and tap the back of the camera, and the back screen is going to then activate the front screen. And on top of that, when you're recording, you can't switch from the screen to the front to the back. So if you're vlogging, it's going to be really difficult if you want to flip around the camera and catch something on camera and then flip it back around to yourself. You can't do that while you're recording. You're going to have to stop the recording and then turn it back on, which is not only cumbersome, but it allows for a lot of user error. So you might actually not hit the button and then not be recording and not know, or be recording and miss something important. So it's really annoying to not be able to do that while you're recording. It doesn't even have a mode where you can just have both the screens on at the same time, which would also be very useful. And also, to flip the camera around, you have to do this double tap on the back screen, which isn't very intuitive. I wish there was a hardware button to make this change. But it's one of those things, again, that feels very alpha, very first generation for a product. And it's basically something you would expect from a first gen product where they haven't had time to go through the kinks and work those out. And you see that in a lot of first gen products across all of tech. Another thing is the rock steady mode, which is really good. The stabilization on this Osmo Action is really good, which you would expect from DJI, which makes a whole bunch of gimbals and stabilization products. All right, so now I'm gonna give the rock steady a try. See how well that stabilization works. But one thing that it does take away from the stabilization is that it's got this lag on the screen when you're running rock steady. So rock steady is the stabilization mode, and when it's activated, it's great. It does an excellent job of stabilization, but both screens, the front and the back, will then lag what you're actually recording, which can be annoying. So if you're recording and then you do this, you're going to see that hand movement later than when I actually set it in real life, and you're going to have this weird gap, and it's going to be very difficult to record yourself or maybe record other things because there's this delay between what your eyes are seeing and what the camera is showing you that it's seeing. Now, there are some advantages to being an alpha product, which means you can take a lot of risks that other companies which have worked on iterations and iterations of the same product don't want to do. Once they get something locked in, they know it's working and it's selling, they tend not to make too many big changes. Whereas in an alpha product, when you want to make a splash, you can really make some features and add some enhancements that the other companies probably won't be doing anytime soon. The front-facing screen is one of those features. You don't find that on action cameras. DJI made a splash with that. And another thing to note about the Osmo Action is it does indoor and low light videography very well compared to an action camera. So if you take a lot of videos indoors, the Osmo Action does a really good job of really covering up those dark areas. It's not over contrasty, so you can actually see what's going on indoors compared to some other action cameras where the contrast level is set very high on default and you don't really get those dark areas. And when you're indoors, that's going to cloud out a lot of the things you're seeing and you're going to just see specks of light. Whereas the Osmo Action does a pretty good job of that in low light and indoors. The Osmo Action is also really good with skin tones. It's got this kind of red yellowish tint to all the videos, but that color helps enhance skin tones, I've found. And it's got this nice sort of natural look when it comes to people. It's not oversaturated or overcompensating, so there's a lot of information to work with from what you're getting out of that Sony sensor in the Osmo Action. And another thing which I really like, which a lot of people probably won't as much as I do, especially if you do a lot of action shots from your motorbike, for example, is that the field of view isn't extremely wide like you find on other action cameras. Personally, when I'm recording with an action camera, I like a narrower field of view. I don't like the warped fisheye look. I don't like all that distortion, but I'm not doing a lot of action photography. If you're going underwater, if you really want to get the maximum angle that you can possibly get, you want to capture all the things that you're seeing or really get that angle from a helmet on top of your head, then you want a wider field of view, which the Osmo Action doesn't have in compared to other action cameras. It's still pretty wide, but it's not the widest angle that you can get. And so far, the Osmo Action has held up to be a very durable action camera. For a first gen, for an alpha product, DJI does have a lot of experience making cameras and gimbals and things that require durability, and the Osmo Action seems to be very durable. I haven't used it for a year, it's not been out that long, but considering how long the Osmo Action has been out and that there haven't been any major durability issues with it, it's really easy to recommend it from a durability point of view. This is one of those cases where it's really easy to recommend a piece of tech in the short term, but not so much in the long term. And that's because the next generation of the Osmo Action is going to fix all of these things that I mentioned. I'm just assuming, and you're probably going to see a big jump from the Osmo Action 1 to the Osmo Action 2 because that's generally how these things work with tech products. The difference between the first generation and the second generation is going to be this big jump, and then the second to the third generation is going to be a smaller jump, and then as you go on, those jumps become smaller and smaller and smaller as they refine different features to get them working just right rather than taking a huge chance and changing all their production processes and all that stuff. So it's really a refinement as you get more and more to a product and you get it fully baked. The Osmo Action clearly isn't that. It's an alpha first gen product. So the second gen is going to be a big jump. And I think they're going to improve upon a lot of the shortcomings of the features that they debuted in the first gen. And there's also something else to note about DJI. We don't know what their release cycle is for these action cameras. When I look at their drones and their gimbals and their other products, they aren't quite on a yearly release cycle. So we don't know if the Osmo Action is going to have a new updated version in September or October when action cameras usually come out, when the new tech is usually released. It might actually be longer than that. So right now, if you're looking at the Osmo Action in 2020, it's not for everybody, but if you do a lot of indoor photography, a lot of videos indoors, inside, if you vlog a lot, so if you need that front-facing screen and you've been just dying for a front-facing screen, then the Osmo Action might be the camera for you. It's got a lot of great features. It's got a lot of great accessories and filters for that lens. It's got the rock steady stabilization, and overall, it's a very durable product. But if you're not dying for that front-facing screen, or you don't do a lot of indoor or low-light video with your action camera, then you're probably better off at the same price of getting an older competing product that's used, that's got all the kinks worked out. You may be sacrificing a little bit in resolution or the top end stabilization features, but you're gonna get a fully baked product that's maybe a year old. It doesn't have a front facing screen, but it's got a lot of features that work, and they work very well, as opposed to the Osmo Action, where you're paying a lot for a first generation, first adopter product. But if you are a first adopter, then the Osmo Action might still be for you, even at its discounted price in 2020. So there you have it. That's my review of the DJI Osmo Action in 2020. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll have new videos for you every week. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.